Hello and welcome to the morning sports briefing here on New Zealand Sports Radio. Yes, that's right. We come at you at 7 a.m. every single morning. It's your best way to start the day up to date on all the important sports news and corrections corner early on, folks. Yesterday, I accidentally said that the tennis was happening in Australia. It's not. The tennis is happening in Auckland. So when the New Zealand tennis kicks off next week. Yes, it starts in Auckland. Sorry about that, folks. A bit of a slip of the tongue there yesterday. In news today, Leon called for review of cancelled league. NRL star suspended. Sri Lanka banned player, and he doesn't even play for the NRL. All Black too expensive, and America's Cup boat returns. Straight into that football news, and Leon, president, has called on the French Prime Minister to reconsider the termination of the season. Leon finished down in just outside of the European places, and that obviously was going to cost them a lot of money. He says that, look, the Bundesliga returns to resume match on the 16th of May. Spain will resume on the 8th. Of June. Italy, Russia, Portugal have resumed collective training, and England is walking to resumption on the 19th of June. How can France be downgraded very quickly and see its professional football devalued? Wow. Yes, big words there. But I, to be honest with you, with my parents living in France, knowing the situation there, I'll be very surprised if he gets any joy out of this. Lyon, Toulouse, and Ames, the two sides that got relegated, all had their appeals against ending the Liga One season early rejected already. Over in England, and we talked about the two extra positive tests. And one of those was Aaron Ramsdale, the former goalkeeper. He's come out and said that he tested negative in the first round of tests, and that he hasn't met anybody. All he's done is go shopping and training since then. So look, some people clearly. Either the tests aren't perfect, which they're not, or he has caught it in the last week, with even when he has been self-isolating. So he now has to self-isolate, even though he has been careful. So interesting over there in the UK, with all these cases coming up each time they have the round of tests. You got to wonder, will they actually really resume? Also, when football is kicking off here in New Zealand next week in the grassroots game, you've got to say, though, that one of the issues is going to be around the number of people gathering by pitches. And you've got to say that that they don't want clubs to have to police it. They can't expect police to come and police it either. And down in Wellington, the union or the central organisation administration can't do it. They've got 12 people to do it in their entire organisation, so they can't police it either. So it is going to rely on people. We have to trust the New Zealand public, as we've heard through this, and people are going to have to behave responsibly. So, folks, yes, do take heed of that if you're going to go watch community sport anywhere. They're going to have the contact tracing QR codes at entrances to pitches, so obviously don't forget also to register using that when you arrive if you want to go watch grassroots sport. I'm now going to hand you over to Ashwin, who's going to take us through the cricket news and that Sri Lanka player who doesn't play NRL getting suspended.
That's right, Paul. Good morning, Paul, and good morning, listeners. As Paul just mentioned, we're going to talk about the Sri Lankan banned player. But firstly, Mitchell Starc has weighed in on the saliva ban. Excuse me. Mitchell Starc has joined a large number of people with concerns around bans on use of saliva to maintain the ball. His fears are with a lack of ability to maintain the ball, he fears having a lack of ability to maintain the ball to balance the even more favourable conditions the batsman will have. He's joined by fellow teammates Josh Hazelwood and Pat Cummins on the need to counterbalance the banning due to health concerns with another medium, which has sort of obviously been in the talks, although they have seemed to have ruled out the Kookaburra wax pad. Starc fears that the game will become too batter-friendly and will become boring to watch and turn young fans off the game. Excuse me. Now on to that Sri Lankan player. The Sri Lankan fast bowler Shihan Madhusanka has been suspended from all forms of cricket with immediate effect. No, he's not banned for match fixing. He's been banned for his arrest for having illegal substances, illegal drugs. Madhusanka, who is 25, took a hat trick on ODI debut against Bangladesh in 2018 and was caught with 2.7 grams of heroin by police on Saturday. The decision to suspend Madhusanka will remain in place until a full inquiry is conducted by the Sri Lanka Cricket Board. God, having a frog in the old throat this morning. And in local news, clubs to play free in Wellington. Wellington Cricket will waive all affiliation fees for Wellington Club Cricket. That will help all clubs through the post-COVID-19 era. The move will cost Wellington Cricket $200K. It helps Wellington Cricket Wellington is in a financially secure position, and that allows them to make it easier for the clubs who will miss out on income due to the close down over winter. And it means that the extra costs won't be passed on to their membership in a way of increased membership fees. And speaking of grassroots crickets, join us on Swinging from the Hip Thursday, 8 p.m. right here on New Zealand Sport Radio. We will have Sharubin Pasapati on the show. Now, Sharubin has taken Takapuna, Suburbs and Grafton to premiership titles in Auckland cricket. And so we'll be asking him what's his secret, amongst other things. So, as I said, join us right here on New Zealand Sport Radio, Thursday, 8 p.m. New Zealand time, and we'll get into what's making Sharubin such a successful coach. So that's our cricket news for today, Paul. Right back to you and back in the studio.
Thank you very much, Ashwin, for our cricket update. Moving on to rugby. And we don't move on to rugby next, do we? No. What am I talking about? Well, the next piece is birthdays from Stephen. Stephen, take us to the birthdays, please.
Thank you, Paul. I'm hoping Ashwin's going to survive the day and make it through to Thursday night for Swinging from the Hip with that voice. I think we're all sounding a little bit croaky. Obviously, we had a bit of a celebration, Paul, yesterday with a number of shows that you've had online thus far. You can tell us about it a little bit later, because right now I'm going to tell you about birthdays today. A world rugby player not once but twice. His midfield breaks were often to the tune of Ua Umanga, and finally the man nicknamed the Barracuda. And that's where we'll start this morning's birthdays. Richard Buckman, born this day, the 27th of May 1989, is a New Zealand Rugby Union player who played for the Highlanders in Super Rugby. Buckman, who can play in any of the back three positions, made his debut for Hawke's Bay in the 2008 season before making the Hurricane squad in 2011. However, the man nicknamed the Barracuda, who turns 31 today, will be fondly remembered for his time with the Highlanders between 2014 and 2019, making 42 appearances for the Southern franchise. And to another man who played in the outside backs, Tana Umanga, born this day, the 27th of May 1973, is a New Zealand former Rugby Union player and former All Black captain. Umanga made 74 appearances for the All Blacks between 97 and 2005, and also made 122 appearances for the Hurricanes between 96 and 2007 before making a surprise return to Super Rugby in 2011, turning out for the Chiefs before pulling the pin after 7 games. Umanga, who turns 47 today, did a stint as a player and a coach at RC Toulon before eventually taking over as head coach of Counties Monaco in the Mitre 10 Cup and eventually the Blues in Super Rugby. And finally, Beauden Barrett, born this day, the 27th of May 1991, is a New Zealand Rugby Union player. The talented first five, who can also play fullback, has represented Taranaki in provincial rugby and the Canes in Super Rugby, and is set to debut for the Blues in Super Rugby Aotearoa in the opening round. Barrett, who celebrates his 29th birthday today, made his All Black debut in 2012 and has since racked up 83 appearances after being part of the All Black team that won the 2000 Rugby World Cup in 2015. Barrett won the World Rugby Player of the Year award in 2016 and 2017, has also been a nominee for the award in 2018, and is only the second player to win the award back-to-back in back-to-back years after former teammate Richie McCaw. Barrett also holds the world record for the most wins in a row for a player on debut, 17 straight, and that's from the time of his debut. Very, very impressive. Want to basically wish those three very impressive men a very happy birthday today. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you, Stephen. A very Rugby Union-based birthdays today. And Barracuda, I think injuries held him back. I think obviously he could have had that season where he got injured in Hong Kong in a pre-season game. Would have been one of could really have kicked on from there. But these things do happen to sportsmen. Going into Rugby Union news, and there's not much on today. Actually, first, before I go there, those videos, yes, as Stephen was saying, we've been running New Zealand Sports Radio now since beginning of June, essentially, and we've had 109 videos on our Facebook page. So do catch up on those. If you could find your favorite video and share it, that would be much, much appreciated. So yeah, head up to New Zealand Sports Radio, our Facebook page, find your favorite video and share it, and that would be much appreciated. As I said, 109 videos already have been done, along with between the long talk, all those interviews, these morning sports briefings, the Hash Rugby Chat Show, which is going to be rebranded as the Driving Maul Show, Do You Know Sport, and Swinging from the Hip. In Rugby Union news, and Liam Squire is not going to be turning out for Tasman. Whilst he would like to do so, the insurance costs are too high for the province, and so he will not be able to turn out for them. It would cost them tens of thousands of dollars just in insurance for him to play. We've already, rumours are that Ben Smith won't be able to turn out for his club in being club footy, again because of insurance costs. You've got to say, Kieran Reid, who has also talked about wanting to play Mitre 10 Cup, will we find out that actually his insurance costs are too much as well? Talking to Richard Freeman, who is the preeminent English writer from Rugby Union in Japan, he says, look, will the Japan clubs want their players to be bashed up when their season kicks off in November, which would be before the Mitre 10 Cup finishes. So yeah, you can see why the Japanese clubs are a bit reticent about letting their players play in the Mitre 10. And that's brings you up to date with the Rugby Union news. And hand you back to Stephen, who will take us through our league update.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Plenty going on in league news this morning. And our lead story is Cronulla Shark star Bronson Cherry has been provisionally suspended from the NRL and is reportedly being investigated by the Australian Sports Anti-Doping Authority. On Tuesday, the NRL revealed Cherry failed a drug test in November 2019 and is facing a multi-year ban. In his A sample, Cherry tested positive for exogenous testosterone, aldosterone, etocolone, and 5B androsterone 3A17B diol. Sounds like a mouthful, which are prohibited by the World Anti-Doping Agency and the NRL's doping policy. The 19-year-old had his phone confiscated by ASADA. The NRL released a statement on Tuesday afternoon confirming Cherry had been provisionally suspended from the competition. Mr. Cherry is prohibited from participating in any WADA compliant sport, including at rugby league, while the provisional suspension is in place. Under the anti-doping policy, Mr. Cherry has now the opportunity to have his B sample analysed. The NRL spoke with Cherry and advised him of support services available to him. So that's not a good start for this very promising young player who'd done some very, very good speed tests during the early season training, so I wonder about that. Listen, in better news for the Warriors, the Warriors have the New Zealand Warriors have made wholesale changes for their first game of the revised 2020 NRL competition against the St. George Illawarra Dragons this Saturday. Kiwis internationals Gerard Beale returns in the centres in his comeback from a patella injury, while outside backs Patrick Herbert and Peter Hiku also rejoined the starting side after missing the second row clash against Canberra in March on compassionate grounds. Beale, Hiku and Herbert replace Adam Pompey and the injured Adam Keirin and centre David Fusitua, who has been in quarantine since arriving late in Australia due to personal reasons. Cody Nikorima has been named to start in the halves alongside Blake Green at halfback, with Chanel Harris-Tavita named to the bench. Rookie Jermaine Tonoa Brown starts at prop alongside Lachlan Burr, while second row Isaiah Papali is named to partner Tohu Harris in the second row. Newcomer Wade Egan retains the number 9 jersey, with Carl Lawton providing backup from the bench. Also named to an extended bench, fit again prop Angatias Pasai and King Vuni Yawaya, Alistair Katoa, Harris Tavita, Josh Karen Pompey, and new signing Jack Murchie, who joined the team from the Raiders in Terrigal last week. The injury-plagued Warriors will be hunting for their first win of the 2020 season, having fallen to losses against Newcastle Knights and the Canberra Raiders prior to the COVID-19 enforced season. Chris Sutton will control the match at the crowdless Central Coast on the weekend, and I'll just give you that kickoff time in one moment. Just looking through that Warriors team. So that's this Saturday, the 30th of May, at 5 p.m. Kickoff time is when the Warriors get things underway. Just quickly going through that team, starting from the fullback Tuivasa Sheck, who will captain the side. Herbert, Hiku, Beale, Maumalo, Nikorima, Blake Green, Burr, Egan, Tonoa Brown, Papali, Harris, and Adam Blair is the starting 13 for the Warriors. So there we go. We're counting down. There's only one more sleep to the start of the NRL. We'll see you back tomorrow morning with more leagues and a few previews, Paul.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for that. And we are also in discussions. I'll be having a phone call this afternoon with somebody about trying to set up a rugby league dedicated show here on New Zealand Sports Radio, a bit like Swinging from the Hip that is for cricket. So if you would also like to be part of that show, if you'd like to be behind the microphone talking about league, then please do reach out and get in touch. We do have spaces for presenters to talk league. Moving on to other news, and it's testing times in sports media here in New Zealand. Sky have confirmed that for April, they had a 68% decline in commercial revenue compared to the April last year, as it suspended charges for COVID-19 hotels, pubs, and clubs. That is obviously likely to reverse once the once bars and sports open up again. But even so, whilst Sky will remain financially viable, there's definitely going to be job cuts, or there have been already job cuts. They also have identified between 135 and 155 million of savings in the event of no sports going ahead in the next 12 months. Now, that's very unlikely, as we've already had announcements of sports going ahead, including league, in the next couple of days, but they've run that scenario already. Also, we heard yesterday that Mark Stafford, the person who has been the face of the TAB, has also been made redundant. This happened a couple of weeks ago, but he's come out and said it publicly yesterday on Twitter that he has been made redundant by the TAB. You've got to say that's a very surprising one, as for a lot of people, he is the TAB brand, or he's the brand. So look, some really big cutbacks there at the TAB, and if they've stopped their radio, or they're not going to resume their radio channel, they're just going to and also they're just going to be putting their TV coverage out over the radio, which, let's be honest, is not the same. The way you commentate for TV and for radio is very different. So it's going to the TAB and the racing is going through a very difficult times. Moving on then, and the Ames school games that we mentioned last week, has now been officially cancelled. That got cancelled yesterday. It was due to take place between the 5th and the 11th of September, and is the biggest biggest schools tournament in the Southern Hemisphere. And look, how we could have expected all these schools to have travelled from around the region is because they came from not only from New Zealand but also the Asia and the Pacific. There was more than 365 schools attended last year, with upwards of 11,500 competitors. Under this environment, with the travel restrictions and also group sizes, it's not surprising that this has had to be cancelled. Now, they have been working very hard to see how they could make it go ahead, but clearly that it's not viable. Moving on, and the Breakers are hoping that All Blacks duo Isaac Fotu and Ty Webster will be able to will potentially sign for the Breakers for this coming season. They've previously been contracted in or been playing in Europe, but are now they're back in New Zealand at the moment, back in Auckland, and have been using the Breakers training facilities since they were allowed to open them up. It's just a matter now of those players knowing what their futures in Europe might be and potentially signing up. Unfortunately, they haven't, by the sounds of it, made themselves available for the NBL, and neither have the other 5 players who are currently contracted for the Breakers done that either. I will point out that I have signed up for the NBL draft, and you can too. They announced yesterday that they will be it will be available on pay-per-view for people outside of New Zealand as well for the first time ever. That revenue will be shared with clubs and players as well. There'll be revenue sharing from the from those subscriptions. So it's going to be that I think is a first. So yes, www.leaguepass.co.nz if you're outside of New Zealand and would like to watch the NBL in New Zealand. That will be broadcast on Sky primarily, but also there'll be some games free for view on their YouTube channel, Prime, and from other channels as well. Over in the America's Cup, and the New Zealand's boat has returned from Europe, and they're looking forward to getting that. Came back yesterday. Looking forward to getting that on the water, as there were innovations on that boat that have yet to be tested. With the cancellation of those 2 regattas in Europe, they've not. This has not yet been in the water, so they're looking at getting that back in the water as quickly as possible. It's been the boat has travelled on 4 container ships, visited 15 ports, being loaded on and off in Tauranga, Singapore, and Toro in Italy. So it really has done has been travelling a lot. The positive thing is that it was packed up in a way to put it on the water as quickly as possible. So hopefully they'll be able to get back out and testing that soon. Don't forget, folks, if you would like to listen to the New Zealand Sports Radio rather than watch on our Facebook page, you can do via our podcast. Just search for New Zealand Sports Radio on iTunes, iHeartRadio, or Spotify, or your favourite podcatchers. Finally, in Formula One, and McLaren has said that it will have to make up to 1,200 people redundant of their 4,000 that work in the UK. They don't all work on Formula One, but some of those losses will be within the Formula One team. So yes, clearly hard times there. 70 people are expected to lose their roles at the in the Formula One team out of 800. So it shows you that those other 3,200 people are making those cars for the road, or cycling, or some of the other sports that McLaren get involved in. You have now started the day the best way, up to date with all the important sports news. Don't forget to join us at 8 p.m. this evening for Do You Know Sport, the best sports quiz on New Zealand radio, the only sports quiz on New Zealand radio, with the biggest prize. And you know what that is? It is bragging rights. So do join us at 8 p.m. this evening for Do You Know Sport.